Hello everyone, my name's Jon Cheek. I'm the founder and director of UniTasterDays, and it's great to see so many people here for this law subject special. Essentially every Tuesday we run UniTaster Tuesdays at UniTasterDays. That's where you can find out one of two things, either subject specific information, which is what this event is about today, or general university guidance. And we run these events at 9:30 a.m, 12 p.m, and 3 p.m, featuring different subjects and different universities every single week. So, for example, this morning at 9:30 a.m, we ran a session on media. At lunchtime, we ran an introduction to personal statements, making more information on virtual open days, as well as top tips for studying at home. And then today, now at 3 p.m, we're going to do a law subject special. So if you, after this event, if you're interested in finding out more about what we've done previously, please visit UniTasterDays.com/Tuesdays. There you can book future events. Also, you can access recordings from previous events we've delivered as well. And that should be really, really useful for you. But if I just introduce this session first, I'm absolutely delighted to say I'm joined by Chloe from the University of Law and Emily from Coventry University. And I'll give them a formal introduction in a second. But as far as what to expect, if you're planning diaries or looking out and seeing the sun and thinking you'd like to be outside sunning yourself, etc., the event is going to finish today at by 3:45. We're going to have two roughly 15-minute introductions from Chloe and Emily. And then we're going to also have a Q&A running throughout. So you'll notice at the bottom of your screen, you've got a Q&A tab. If you've got any questions for Chloe, any questions for Emily, please do use the Q&A. Also, if you've got any questions for me and UniTasterDays, do ask them there. We can answer them as we go through. But if I can now introduce Chloe and Emily formally. As I said right at the start, this is a law subject special. And Emily is joining us from Coventry University. She's a Regional Student Recruitment Specialist. And Emily's going to be doing a session on looking at personal statements, but purely for law, and giving you top tips in terms of law personal statements. That should be a really, really handy session for you. As well as that, we're joined by Chloe Warsop from the University of Law. Chloe is a Student Recruitment Manager. And Chloe's session is going to look at careers in law and essentially how to get there. So if you're watching this and you want to be maybe a solicitor or a barrister or want to work in another area of law, Chloe will give you an overview of how to actually get to certain careers and the process that is involved. You've not tuned in to listen to me, you've tuned in to listen to our fantastic speakers. So without further ado, I'll pass the floor now to Chloe, please.
So as Jon said, I do work at the University of Law. For those of you who haven't heard much about the University of Law before, we're a bit different from other universities in a couple of ways, really. First one is, as the name suggests, we are a specialist university. So what that means is that we focus on a specific set of subjects. As the name suggests, it's law and it's law-related things. So it's law, criminology, we also look at things like policing and politics, as well as business courses as well. The other reason we're a little bit different, again, is kind of given away by our name, in that we're not just in one place across the country. Hence, we don't have a place in our name. We are the University of Law, rather than University of X City, for example. So we have campuses all across the country. Down in the south, we are in Guildford, we are in Bristol, we are in London, we are in Nottingham and Birmingham, and then we're also up in Leeds and Manchester. So it's still the University of Law, whichever one of those campuses you go to, and the courses are taught the same at all of them as well. It's literally like we've taken a normal university and we've pulled the buildings a little bit further apart. But they're all still the University of Law, same teaching, same courses. The nice thing about that for our students is it means they can swap between campuses if they want to. So you could think, you know what, I really want to try being a student in London for a year, go down and study at a London campus, and think, you know what, my last couple of years or my last year, I want to be back closer to home. So I'll go to Birmingham, for example, or I'll go to Bristol. But enough about that. So what we're here to look at today is all about careers in law. So that's what I'm going to go over with you. So kind of the different careers that you might have in law. And we're going to start off harking back to what fun used to look like in the early noughties, where you used to get a magazine and you'd read through and answer various questions. And it'd tell you which member of the Spice Girls you were more like. We're going to do that just minus the Spice Girls. What we're going to do is look at the type of lawyers that you think you want to be, because hopefully you're all here because you're interested in studying law. Most people at this stage who are interested in studying law are interested because they want to go on and be lawyers. So we're going to try and find out which type of lawyer you might want to be. We're going to bring up a series of statements on the screen, and some are going to be in a purple box, some are going to be in a blue box. What I want you to do is read through those statements, and for any of them that you agree with, write yourself down either a P for purple or a B for blue. So for example, if we look at the first lot, if you read, I want lots of contact with my clients who are businesses in the general public, if you think, yeah, that resonates with me, I agree that, either on your phone, on a bit of paper you've got, or just remember in your head, give yourself a B, okay? If you think that, yeah, I like the freedom of being self-employed and I can manage an inconsistent income, then give yourself a P for purple, okay? Read through, so you can agree with as many as you want to, you don't have to agree with any of them, you can agree with some, all of them, it's fine. Just keep a track of how many Ps you're getting, how many Bs you're getting, okay? So think if you want a regular monthly salary, that'll be a B for yourself. If you want to spend a lot of time speaking in public, presenting arguments, that's a P, okay? Comfortable familiarising myself with a case at short notice and often working weekends and evenings, that would be a P, if you want to give yourself that. Or I would like to work on a case from the start, so from initially taking a client's instructions, going to court all the way through to the end of the case, that would be, okay? I'm going to move on to the next slide, okay, so we've got some more on this next slide as well. Again, keep having a look through, see what you agree with. So if I enjoy travelling around the country, that would be a P, okay? I want to become an expert in a particular field, that's a P. On a day-to-day basis, I'd rather spend most of my time in the same office, that would be a B. I want my career progression and income to be based solely on my own work, that would be a P for you. Stability and job security is very important to me. I enjoy drawing up contracts or working on deals, they would both count as a B. I want to establish long-term relationships with non-lawyer clients, that's a B. Or last one, I want to work in a close-knit profession where I interact mainly with other lawyers, give yourself a P for that. So as you might have seen coming, we should tot up how many Ps you wrote down and how many Bs you wrote down, because that's going to give us a bit of an indication of what type of lawyer it might be that you are, okay? So some of you might be ahead of me and might have worked this out already, depending on how much research you've already done. If you were largely Bs, if you were largely agreeing with all those blue statements, that is leaning much more towards the work of a solicitor. If you were more towards the purple statements, that's leaning more towards the work of a barrister. So solicitors and barristers are both lawyers. So when someone describes himself as a lawyer, they could be either one of these two, because they are both lawyers. They're just different types of lawyer. So some of the main differences between these two, you will have picked up going through those statements. One of the big ones I start because a lot of people don't realise it, is as a barrister, you are self-employed. So as a solicitor, you work for a company, you're employed, you get a salary every month, and that's how you earn your money doing your job. As a barrister, it's not like that. You aren't employed by a company, or the vast majority of barristers are. There are a few companies that would have their own barristers, normally law firms that would have their own kind of barristers on tap. The vast majority, kind of 90%, if not more, of barristers are self-employed. So you find your own work. So you have to build up those relationships with firms of solicitors and clients so that they come to you when they want themselves represented in court by somebody. You also have distinctly less barristers than you have solicitors. You are looking at somewhere around 150,000 solicitors practicing in the UK at the minute. There are 16,000 barristers. Okay, so pretty much a tenth. And that is because barristers have a very specific role in the legal process. A barrister is the person who stands up with the wig on, as you can see, in court and argues on someone's behalf. Not everything that relates to law ends up in a court. Therefore, you don't need barristers for everything legal, which is why you have fewer of them than you have solicitors. There are lots and lots of things like writing contracts, negotiating things that a solicitor can do. You don't have to get a barrister involved to do that, which is again why there are so many more solicitors than there are barristers. So it is in some ways a little bit more competitive to become a barrister. But what you'll find is people who are barristers find it a really, really rewarding career, and there is the potential for really high earnings if you're a really popular barrister being asked to present in court for lots and lots of people. One of the other differences you've got, you will have seen from those statements, is as a solicitor, you're working for a firm, the client will come in and you'll meet them and you will follow them through that case from beginning to end. You don't get to do that as a barrister because, again, you're only involved for that bit when they go to court. That's the only portion that you get involved with. So you will have potentially more clients, okay, but you'll see them for shorter periods of time. You will get the information, then you will, sometimes in quite a quick turnaround, then have to go and represent them in court, and then you'll be on to your next case and the next one. Whereas a solicitor, you would see that person right from the start when they said, right, I've got this problem, what do I do? And you follow them all the way through, okay? So there's some of the main differences. I always think that thing about being self-employed is quite a big one. What that does also mean as a barrister is you will travel all over the country. you often end up specialising in a particular area. So you become a well-known barrister for family law or criminal law. So it won't just be people in your immediate area that will want you to work for them. You'll end up travelling all over the country, okay? And there will be work, for example, in an evening, because you'll get information quite late on for a case that you've got to do the next day or the day after. Whereas for a solicitor, it's much more like a regular 9 to 5 job. They're kind of some of the main differences between those two. And if you don't know, if you came up even with both of them, or now I've explained that, you think, oh no, hang on, I don't know which one I want to do. That is absolutely fine. You get people much further on in the process and where you guys will be now who still don't really know which one they want to do. That's why things like work experience really come in handy. But I would stress, don't worry too much about that right now. Okay, that's something to think about much further down the line if you are still unsure. In terms of how do you get there, then how do you get down that line? I'll start off with the solicitors, because in the UK, as you might be aware, you have to choose whether you want to qualify as a solicitor or a barrister. You cannot do both. Some countries you can, but in the UK you can't. You have to pick which one you want to do. So we start off right at the start in terms of doing an undergraduate degree at university, a first degree at university. Now, you don't necessarily have to study law at this point. So what you'll see is that main bar, it says qualifying law degree is your starting point. That can be, and for a lot of people it is. So you would go to university and you would study a law degree for often 3 years. You don't have to do that though. If you aren't sure what you want to do yet, or actually you just think, do you know what, I know I like law, but I want a few years of doing something else before I get into that, that's absolutely fine. You could go to university and study any subject that's not law. You could study chemistry, you could study history, you could study business, events, anything. And you obtain that degree. All you'd have to do then is do what we call a law conversion course. So you'd spend your 3 years doing, let's say, chemistry. Then after that, you do another university course that's a year long, that's a law conversion course. That teaches you the things you need to know to then put you in the same position as someone that spent 3 years doing law. What that doesn't mean is you're not having to do a 3-year degree in 1 year. Very important to stress that. We're not taking 3 years worth of study and squashing it into 1 year. What you do in that law conversion course is you pull out all the essential things you would have learned in a qualifying law degree, okay, a law degree. They're all the core things you have to know. Because in 3 years of study, there'll be an optional modules, there'll have been other things. You might have picked modules from other departments, even that kind of thing. Still means you'd have had the law content, but you've had other bits around the edge. So what you do in that law conversion is just that pure stuff, okay, just that absolute basic fundamental knowledge you need. After that law conversion course, you are then at the same point as someone that's done a pure law degree from the start, okay? So that's your first step. Your first step is getting an undergraduate law degree, whether it be law from the start, or whether it be a non-law subject and then a conversion. And actually about 50% of practicing solicitors in the UK at the minute didn't do a law undergraduate degree, they did a different subject and then did a conversion. Okay, so you're not putting yourself at a disadvantage either. Once you've got to that stage, you've got your undergrad degree, or you've got your undergrad degree and your conversion, you then have to pick whether it's solicitor or barrister that you want to go into. So if we start with solicitor, you then have to carry on with another university course, a postgraduate course, which at the minute is called the legal practice course. What you guys might see, and depending on when you're planning on starting university, is that there are some changes happening at the minute to how solicitors qualify. I'll go through what it currently is, and I'll make a little reference to what it's going to be, but don't worry too much about that. That'll all become clear in 3-4 years' time when we get there. But the minute you do a legal practice course, it's a year-long postgraduate course at university. You then apply to a law firm for a training contract, and that is 2 years long. And that is essentially working for a firm as a trainee for 2 years. And once you've completed that, along with that course, you're admitted as a solicitor. You're a qualified solicitor. Okay. The way that is changing slightly in the future is you'd still have to have that 2 years of experience, but rather than passing one course known as the legal practice course, what you actually have to pass is 2 sets of exams. Now, that's not saying that you won't want to go to university to study for those exams, because most people probably will, but rather than passing a course, it's changing to passing some exams, but still a similar format. The other option you've got if you want to be a solicitor is looking at the apprenticeship route. There are more and more solicitor apprenticeships coming up now. What I will say about solicitor apprenticeships is they're a great opportunity. So you are earning a salary, you are working from day one. You are also studying at the same time. So your university fees are being paid by your employer, because by the end of that 6 years, you'll still have a university level qualification. You'll still have passed the equivalent of the legal practice course and done your training contract. You'll have done everything in that 6 years without having to pay those fees. but you will have had to balance working and studying at the same time, okay, which can be quite a lot to do. I will also say they are very competitive, okay. If anyone is thinking about looking into an apprenticeship route, by all means look, okay. What you would have to do is you would have to apply to the employer like you're applying for a job, rather than going through a university, and then you find a university afterwards. Often the employer will tell you which university. So at the University of Law, for example, we have certain employers who send their apprentices to us to do the study part of their apprenticeship. But so you'd need to find that employer, you need to pass essentially a job interview to be able to do that. So there are less solicitor apprenticeships than there are places at university. So please look into it if that's something that interests you, but I wouldn't discount having a university application running alongside it, because there's no harm in having both going along side by side to give yourself the best chance. Okay. So that's solicitor. Quickly on to barrister. So you've done the same first bit, you've got your first university degree or your first degree in your conversion course. You then go on to do a barrister course. Now, they're not necessarily all called the same thing at every university. We call it the barrister's training course. We call it the bar practice course. Some places call it the barrister training course, some call it various different things. Okay, but the University of Law is the bar practice course. That again is a year long, it's a postgraduate course at university. You then still have to do a work experience part. For being a barrister, it's called a pupillage. So you spend 1 year doing some shadowing of another barrister, and then kind of the end half of it, you are working but being heavily supervised. At the end of that 1 year pupillage, you are then admitted as a barrister. So a lot of studying and a lot of learning involved, but what you hopefully see is for the latter parts of those, you are working. Okay, so whilst you're still doing those bits of trying to get out there and learn on the job. Now, when you come to study law at university, I mentioned earlier about how when you do a law conversion, fundamental areas of law that you will have to study to be able to put training, and they're represented by what you've got on screen. Okay, so they are things like tort law. So that's one of those words you hear bandied about, but often people aren't necessarily sure what that means. So that's a lot to do with when you see those adverts saying, have you had an accident that's not your fault? Tort is kind of getting compensation, getting recompense for something that's been done wrong to you, that you think you're owed something for. You look at contract law, so that's contracts for different types of things. Land law, equity and trusts, which is a fancy word of saying things to do with money. Public law. Public law is all to do with essentially the interaction between the government and individuals, so parliament and laws and things that way. Criminal law, which is obviously a really popular one that a lot of people are interested in. And then EU law, which I get a lot of questions about at the minute. Currently, as far as kind of the regulatory authorities are concerned, EU law is still a fundamental. Okay, it's still something, even though as the UK we are leaving the EU, it's still something that as a university we're told to teach our students to make them qualified. And that's for various reasons. For example, we have various ties to Europe geographically, various things to do with trade that will not go away when the UK formally leaves the European Union. Okay, so that's why that's still in there. Now, that's not me saying that they're the only 7 areas of law any lawyer works in. There are, of course, loads and loads of different areas, but by having those 7 foundations, you have the knowledge to then go on and work in those areas. So it could be medical law, so things to do with medical negligence. It could be copyright, intellectual property, who owns what. Family law is a massive area of law. Environmental law, human rights. You've got a little boat at the bottom. Shipping law is a massive thing. Because we think about you're taking various different goods over different international waters from one country to another, to one jurisdiction to another. Loads of law involved in that, which you might not think about. And then you've got employment law. There's a whole lot of various things that go into actually employing somebody. So there are loads of different areas you can work at, and law is actually everywhere. And just to kind of finish off on that point, this is a little picture I bring up to get people to think about what area of law they think this is. So when I ask people, they normally go environmental. I'd go with something like that. I will tell you what this represents. This is actually an intellectual property law case. This is a photo that was taken by the monkey itself. You may be aware of this, depending on how up on your law you are. So there was a photographer who was photoing some animals in the wild. He thought, do you know what, just for fun, I'm going to leave my camera set up ready to take a picture and walk away and see if the animals do anything with it. This monkey did, okay? picked it up, took a very marvellously well-framed selfie. And the photographer was like, great. The photographer sold the picture, you know, it was going really, really well. A website then put this picture up, and the photographer went to the website saying, you need to take that down because you don't have my permission to put that up, because the photographer owned the photo, so it's his intellectual property. So they said you have to take it down. The website turned around and said, no, we don't, because you don't own that photo, the monkey owns the photo. This went to court, genuinely. So there was a large battle in court as to whether it was the photographer who owned the photo or the monkey who owned the photo, because it was the monkey who had actually taken the photo in the first place. The court found in the photographer's favour, okay, that it was his photo. Peter, the animal rights charity, then appealed that decision and tried to take it back to court for a second time. And then this is one of these situations where I said you have more solicitors than barristers, because solicitors get involved in things barristers might not. Fortunately, on this second occasion, it was resolved outside of court. Okay, so negotiations happened before it went back to court, the Court of Appeal. I mean, it was leaning in the photographer's favour again, but this whole thing nearly bankrupted the photographer involved. So to save himself having to go through a second court trial, he agreed outside of court that any money he now makes going forward from this photo, 25% of it goes to animal charities. So that was what he had to agree with Peter in order for them to drop the appeal. It didn't go back to the court. So a lot of law involved there in what was essentially a monkey taking a selfie, but lots and lots of things there. So it gets into areas of life you wouldn't even think about. Okay, that's it from me. So kind of a rough look at careers in law and where you can go. If you have got any questions about the University of Law, obviously we've got the Q&A box, or anything about talked about, you can pop it in there, but you can find us on various places online as well. We also are on something called UniBuddy. So if you pop onto the University of Law website and you go to kind of the student tab at the top, you can click chat to a current student. So that means you can ask students on all of our courses any questions you've got about whether it's studying law in general or whether it's about the University of Law. You can do that anytime by going on that website, or we do have kind of live break times every Thursday from 10 till 11:30 running for the next few weeks as well. That is everything from me. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. There we go. This is the point where I find out I've been talking to myself for the last 15 minutes and nobody has seen any of that. But hopefully that will work. So I'm going to mute myself and hand over to Emily.
Thank you very much, Chloe. That's brilliant. Just before I pass to Emily, in terms of the Q&A, if you post a Q&A question, Chloe's session was fantastic. It's prompted loads of Q&A questions. So if you have asked a question, Chloe will, if that's okay, Chloe will begin answering them. But a lot of the questions related to the talk, so we decided to leave those for you, if that's okay. But without further ado, let me introduce Emily. Emily Day is a Regional Student Recruitment Specialist with Coventry University. And I'm really looking forward to this session because we do loads of general personal statement sessions, but very few sessions which actually focus on a particular topic, which Emily will do now. So Emily, without further ado, the floor is yours.
Fantastic, thanks, John. I feel the pressure now that you've said that, but we'll see what happens. And obviously, thanks, Chloe, for picking up those questions that I've kindly left in the Q&A for you. So I'll tell you a little bit about Coventry University as well as what Chloe did with the University of Law. We aren't just based in Coventry in the same way that the University of Law is based all over. We do have some campuses in London as well as a campus in Scarborough, which is where I'm from. So if you do hear any seagulls or anything during this, it is just because I'm by the seaside. And similarly to what Chloe was saying about how you can mix and match between the different campuses, you can do that with us as well. At the end of this presentation, there will be my contact details. So there's already been a few questions that have come in about do we offer particular things at Coventry, so just get in touch and either we can either have a chat or we can get a prospectus sent out to you or anything like that. So my contact details are on the last slide. So in terms of sort of personal statements, hopefully most of you will have that basic understanding about what the personal statement is and how that fits into your UCAS application. So I've gone straight to sort of the nitty-gritty of actually the personal statement itself. And in terms of what admissions tutors are looking for, Now, some of you will notice straight away that there is a comment in there about interviews. Now, need to be really clear that not every university will ask you for an interview when it comes to a law course. We don't at Coventry, and I'm sure Chloe will be able to tell you whether they do at the University of Law. But some universities will. So as you're doing your research at the moment, do find out which universities do ask for an interview. And the reason I've mentioned this as part of the personal statement is a lot of the time that interview can be a great way to pick up in more detail about things that you're talking about, or you can talk about something that you've been doing previously or something that you're doing currently, and then at the interview setting be able to expand on that, because a lot of the time it's been quite a few months since submitting your personal statement to when you have that interview. So it's worth bearing that in mind when you're thinking of different examples, just how you can put that into practice if you did have an interview. And what they also want to see is evidence that you have the skills to contribute towards university life. And I'll talk more about transferable skills as we go through. But think about, again, how have you engaged within your school life at the moment, your college life? How can you bring that into a university setting? But also thinking about how is that going to apply to the world of law as well, or whatever career within sort of that sector that you're wanting. The biggest thing is being able to show your enthusiasm, your motivation, and your commitment to that subject area. For a lot of you, the personal statement is the one thing that the admissions tutors will read about you. If there's not an interview, that's the thing that they'll make the decision about whether or not they would like to offer you a place on their course. So it's really that time to sell yourself. We know as pretty much as a nation, we're not necessarily the most confident when it comes to talking about ourselves. And this is one of the hardest things about the personal statement, is really putting yourself almost in that uncomfortable position and talking about yourself in such a positive way. And it will take you a few drafts to get there, I promise you. I think I told you did about 8 or 9 drafts of my statement all the way back when I was applying for university. So give yourself that time. The fact that you're doing this session now is great, because it's going to give you that time to be able to really put all the effort into that statement and show all of that enthusiasm that you've got. And particularly for those of you that are thinking particularly about the law side of things, but I know we've had some questions already about things like criminology and things like that, really show that you understand the career that you're going into. So even just the little things that Chloe touched on in her session, the fact that a barrister is self-employed, you know, really focusing on those elements to really show the reader that you know what it is you're almost letting yourself in for, but why you want to get into that career. What is it that motivates you? What is it that inspires you to go into that area? So these are the sort of things we're wanting to see within the personal statement, and it's a really great tool to be able to start planning out into different paragraphs what you're wanting to see, what you're wanting to put in there. So subject specific, what areas that we're talking about. And again, someone asked this question while Chloe was doing her session. We don't necessarily want you to come to university having studied law. If you have, then fantastic, but it's not necessarily a requirement for most universities. But again, do check that on the university website. What we're wanting to see is that you can use those transferable skills of what you would use as a lawyer, as a solicitor, as a barrister, or even going into the police force, criminology, things like that. What transferable skills have you got that you can say, well, actually, the fact that I've done communication skills as part of a history project, that will be really useful when I am a barrister or when I'm a solicitor, and really start to break down those skills of what would be needed as part of that role and how you can demonstrate that within your statement. And I've got a couple of examples as we go through. Think about, again, your skills and your attributes. And I know that some of you, that you're going to be really worried at the moment, the fact that any work experience that you have planned, you can't do, any part-time jobs you might have, currently you're not currently working, but think about all the different experiences that you can get. Think about all the online activities that you can do. So can you do online TED Talks? Can you do some online reading with things like Google Scholar? And just be able to add to your experience online during sort of this current climate. And hopefully between now and when you submit your application, you'll be able to start adding a bit more of that physical work experience in there. But just be aware, obviously universities know what's going on, and we are understanding to that as a situation. But what we are still going to want to see is that you can use the experience that you have already got, whether that be in part-time job before it finished, or as part of your course, or even what you've been doing as part of an online learning experience, then being able to use that experience within your personal statement. So even saying that you attended this is going to start to show that university that you've got that enthusiasm, you've got that motivation to find out about the subject as well. So this does have some links in there. I'm not sure if John will send out the slides, but if he does, those links to things like some journal articles are in there. The link on Taster Sessions does take you back to John's website. You can tell that we're a fan. But do start to think about all the different things that you can be doing now that is going to add to your experience and add to your knowledge. So I've already mentioned a little bit about transferable skills, but this is what we're really wanting to see as part of that personal statement. And there is so many different skills. These are just a few within there. Really start to break it down into what you think are the biggest skills that the course that you're wanting to go on to needs. So things like communication skills, research skills, presentation skills. Think about what you're going to need as part of the course, but also where you can give those good examples as part of that as well. So if you've got some fantastic experience of communication skills, of research skills, they're what you're wanting to put into your statement. You don't necessarily want to say, I don't have any analytical skills. You want to keep it really positive and talk about all the things that you have got within there. In terms of a structure, and hopefully anyone that has gone to any sort of personal statement webinars that have been offered by other universities or offered through UniTasterDays, you'll hopefully have seen this. If not, please do sign up for some different personal statement ones, and it'll go into more detail. But what we often say to students is think about it as an ABC method. So A is the activity that you are talking about. So even using this as an example is that you attended a UniTasterDays webinar about finding out more about studying law. What was the benefit to this activity for you? That it helps you decide between being a solicitor or a barrister, and how that's going to prepare you on the course means that you can focus your attention in specific areas. You can do different research over the summer into those particular topics, maybe modules that you might want to pick. So it's all just thinking about how you can link it back. And if you follow that ABC method all the way through for all of the different skills that you want to talk about, for the different examples you want to give, it's going to give you a really strong personal statement. And it almost is going to help the reader think, there's no reason for me not to want to give this person a place at our university, rather than making them question whether or not they want to give you that place. So what I have done is picked out a specific example from actually one of our applications that came through for law at Coventry. And then I've highlighted within there the skills that they are talking about. So as you can see, this student isn't talking about law A-level, they're talking about sociology, but they're talking about how they have developed their analysing skills, how they've done independent research, and then gone on and given us an example. And what's really nice is that example is linked back to law by looking at crime, and then going on again to talk about that they took a special interest in family and education, and then going on to negotiation skills. So there's so many skills that this one student has touched on just by looking at what they've done within their current studies. And it's a great example to be able to start to show those skills, show that interest, and show that motivation within there. So finally, hopefully I've stuck to my time and actually been under my 15 minutes. I just wanted to do a couple of little do's and don'ts. And this is across the board, no matter what course you're applying for, no matter what university. So to really do your research before you start writing your personal statement. So all those questions that were coming in about is particular sort of entry requirements, things like that, that's a great starting point. But keep going with that research in terms of actually what you want to do at university. Start by just putting some bullet points of ideas down of what you want to include. It's easier to edit down a personal statement once you've got it to a point where you're happy with it. It's a lot harder to keep adding stuff in. So at this point, I would just keep a list of everything you think might be relevant, anything you want to talk about. Start to sort of develop that, talk about the skills that it's going to give you, and then edit it back as you go through. Keep it really positive, keep it quite excited. You know, this is that one piece of writing, and it is quite a short piece. You are only looking about a side of A4. That's what's going to help you get your place at university. And do try and be original within there as well. We know that you're all doing fairly similar subjects at times. So think about how you can make yourself stand out from the crowd. What is it about you or your interest in that particular subject that's going to make you stand out? Keep it really relevant. So if there is an area that you're wanting to go into, you know, keep linking it back to that. Think about different examples like that one that Chloe talked about with the photographer. Think of different examples that you can put into your personal statement and how you think that applies either to your circumstances, to your course, and think about actually how you can personalise it within there. As I've already said, you are going to produce quite a few drafts of your personal statement within there. So just be prepared for that. And if people start to give you feedback, whether that be tutors, whether that be people at universities, whether that be friends and family, do take that feedback on board and be prepared to come up with a new draft. But at the same time, bear in mind that this is your statement. So do get feedback from people, but try and keep it to a minimum of maybe 3 people, because the more people you start to pass it around, the different opinions can start to come through, and it can get a little bit confusing and complicated, and it can start to send you a little bit insane. And make sure that you proofread the statement. So there is no spell checker on the UCAS application. So make sure that you're writing your personal statement in Word or equivalent before you're copying and pasting that into the application. And then finally, just some of my sort of don'ts. Don't lie on your personal statement. It does make it harder to come up with that evidence if you do. But as I said, you could be invited for interview, and then it's a lot harder to keep up that in face-to-face as well. So do keep it as truthful as you possibly can. Don't keep using I at the start of sentences. It doesn't make it sound particularly great when every sentence is I did this, I did this, I did that. And it doesn't always show the best use of the English language. And bear in mind that communication skills is a really, really key part of the course that you're applying for. So really show that strong communication skills from the very first interaction you have with that university. So don't leave it to the last minute. I'm hoping that because you've signed up for this in June, you're going to be one of those students that is keen and that wants to get involved with their application. So hopefully you won't be one of those, but it is better for you to just get your application done, get it sent off as soon as you're happy with it as well. So don't copy or download a personal statement, because UCAS can tell whether if it has been copied. And again, not a great start to your university journey if that's flagged up. And just be really careful about mentioning specific universities. So this session was very much designed to be completely impartial for you guys and give you an overview of studying law. So don't mention the fact that it was done by the University of Law and Coventry. You know, keep it impartial of saying UniTasterDays, because then it's not going to put off any of the universities that you're applying to. Because we see the one statement you're going to create, all the universities you apply for see just that one statement. So just keep it really general within there. And that should be me done. So as I said, that is my contact details. If anyone wants to scribble that down, or we can put it in the chat. But do get in touch if you want to ask any specific questions about us as a university, or if there's anything else from this session that you want me to sort of clarify or anything like that as well.